It's all in the mind. These light-hearted illustrations of the male and female brain are funny only because they contain such an element of truth. But how much? Well, more than you might think. In this chapter, we will examine the recent dramatic revelations from research into the brain. You'll find this chapter a real eye-opener, and at the end we have included a simple but remarkable test to show you just why your brain behaves the way it does, why we are smarter than the rest. Look at the following drawings and you'll notice two striking differences between gorillas, Neanderthal man, and us modern humans. Firstly, our brain is more than 3 times the size of the gorillas and 1/3 bigger than our primitive ancestors. Fossil evidence shows that our brain has remained about the same size for the last 50,000 years, and there has been little change in our brain functions. Secondly, we have a protruding forehead which our forefathers and primate cousins lacked. The forehead contains the left and right frontal brain lobes which give us many of our unique abilities such as thinking, map reading, and speech. This is what makes us superior to all other animals. Men and women's brains have evolved with different strengths, talents, and abilities. Men, being responsible for hunting game, needed areas in the brain for long-distance navigation, to develop tactics for organizing the kill, and to hone skills for hitting a target. They didn't need to be good conversationalists or sensitive to anyone's emotional needs, so they never developed strong brain areas for interpersonal skills. Women, by contrast, needed an aptitude for good short-range navigation, wider peripheral vision to monitor their surroundings, the ability to perform several activities simultaneously, and effective communication skills. As a consequence of these needs, men and women's brains developed specific areas to handle each skill. In today's terms, ancient society was very sexist, but we'll tackle this issue later. 3% higher in general intelligence than men. Until the 1960s, most of the data collected on the human brain came from soldiers killed on the battlefields, and there were plenty of candidates to work on. The problem was, however, that most of these were males, and the silent assumption was that female brains operated in the same way. Today, latest research reveals that the female brain operates significantly differently to the male brain. Therein lies the source of most of the problems in relationships between the sexes. The female brain is slightly smaller than the male brain, but studies show this to have no significance on a woman's brain performance. In 1997, Danish researcher Bent Packenberg of the Neurology Department of Copenhagen Municipal Hospital demonstrated that, on average, a man has around 4 billion more brain cells than a woman, but generally, women test around 3% higher in general intelligence than men. In 1999, brain researcher Professor Ruben Gur of the University of Pennsylvania Medical Center discovered that women have more gray matter than men. Gray matter is where the brain does its computational work and makes women better communicators than men. It's obvious that women are smarter than men. Think about it, diamonds are a girl's best friend. Man's best friend is a dog. What's where in the brain? Here is a commonly held view of which side of the brain controls which function. While research and our understanding of the human brain is increasing dramatically every day, there are varying interpretations of the research results. But there are several areas on which scientists and researchers do agree. Using magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, which measures electrical activity in the brain, it is now possible to identify and measure the exact location of many specific functions in the brain. With brain scanning equipment, we can see which part of the brain is handling a particular task. When a brain scan shows a specific location for a skill or function, it means that the person will usually be good at performing that skill, that they enjoy doing it and are attracted to occupations and pursuits that allow them to use it. For example, most men have a specific brain location for sensing direction, so they find that easy to do. They enjoy planning directions and are drawn to pursuits and pastimes that allow them to use abilities such as navigation and orientation. Women have specific areas for speech. They're good at it, can do it with ease, and are attracted to fields that allow them to make use of this strength, such as therapy, counseling, and teaching. Where there is no clear brain location for a certain skill, it usually means that a person is not naturally good at, or does not particularly enjoy, tasks that make use of that skill. This is why it's as hard to locate female navigators as it is to find solace in a male counselor, or learn proper English from a male language teacher. Where brain research began. The first recorded scientific tests into differences between the sexes were held at the Museum of London by Francis Galton in 1882. He found that men had better sensitivity to bright, sound shrill, or high-pitched noises, had a stronger hand grip, and were less sensitive to pain than women. At the same time, in America, a similar study found that men preferred red to blue, had a larger vocabulary, and preferred solving technical problems to domestic ones. Women could hear more acutely, used more words than men, and preferred working on individual tasks and problems. Early research into the specific location of brain functions came from brain-damaged patients. It was found that men who suffered injury to the left side of the brain had lost much or all of their speech and vocabulary skills, whereas women who were similarly brain-damaged did not suffer speech loss to the same extent, indicating that women have more than one center for speech. Men were 3 to 4 times more likely to suffer speech losses or speech impediments than women, and were much less likely to ever regain these skills. If a man is injured on the left side of the head, he stands a chance of becoming mute. If a woman is hit in the same place, she'll probably keep right on talking. Men with brain damage on the right side lost most or all of their spatial skills, the ability to think in 3 dimensions, and to rotate objects in the mind to picture how they look from different angles. For example, an architectural plan of a house is seen 2-dimensionally by a female brain, whereas a male brain can see it 3-dimensionally, that is, men can see depth. Most men can see how a building would look as a finished house. Women who were brain damaged in the exact same place on the right suffered little to no change to their spatial skills. Doreen Kimura, professor of psychology at the University of Western Ontario, found that speech disorders occur in men when the left side only of the brain is damaged, but only occur in women when the frontal lobe of either hemisphere is damaged. Stuttering is a speech defect that is almost entirely restricted to males, and there are 3 to 4 times as many boys as girls in remedial reading classes. Put simply, males have limited abilities when it comes to speech and conversation. This result won't surprise most women. History books show that men's lack of talk and conversation has been making women tear their hair out for thousands of years. How the brain is analyzed. Since the early 1990s, brain scanning equipment has developed to the point where it is now possible to see your brain operating live on a television screen using positron emission tomography, PET, scans, and magnetic resonance imaging, MRI. Marcus Rakel of Washington University School of Medicine measured specific areas of increased metabolism in the brain to pinpoint the exact areas that are used for specific skills, and these are shown here. At Yale University in 1995, a team of scientists led by Drs. Bennett and Shaywitz conducted tests on men and women to establish which part of the brain is used to specific hotspots in the brain using MRI match rhyming words. Using MRI to detect minor changes in blood flow to different parts of the brain, they confirmed that men used mainly the left brain for speech tasks, while women used both left and right. These experiments and countless others carried out since the 90s all clearly show the same result. Men and women's brains operate differently. Research also shows that the left side of a girl's brain develops more rapidly than that of a boy, which means she'll speak sooner and better than her brother, read earlier, and learn a foreign language more quickly. It also explains why speech pathologists are booked solid for treatment on little boys. Ask men and women if their brains work differently. Men will say they think they do. In fact, there was something they were reading on the internet the other day. Women will say, of course they do. Next question, boys, however, develop the right side of their brain faster than girls, giving them better spatial, logical, and perceptual skills. Boys excel at mathematics, building, puzzles, and problem solving, and master these much earlier than girls. It may be fashionable to pretend that the differences between the sexes are minimal or irrelevant, but the facts simply do not support that view. Unfortunately, we now live in a social environment that insists we are the same despite the mountain of evidence showing we are wired differently and have evolved with dramatically varying inbuilt capabilities and inclinations. Why women are better connected. The left and right brain hemispheres are connected by a bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. This cable lets both sides of the brain communicate and exchange information. Try to imagine you have 2 computers on your shoulders with an interface cable between the 2. That cable is the corpus callosum. Neurologist Roger Gorski of the University of California at Los Angeles confirmed that a woman's brain has a thicker corpus callosum than a man's, with women having up to 30% more connections between the left and right. He also proved that men and women use different parts of the brain when working on the same task. These findings have since been duplicated by other scientists elsewhere. Research also reveals that the female hormone estrogen prompts nerve cells to grow more connections within the brain and between the two hemispheres. Studies show the more connections you have, the more fluent your speech. It also explains women's ability to multi-track unrelated activities and throws a great deal of light on women's intuition. As we have discussed, a woman has a greater range of sensory equipment and, with that multiplicity of fiber connections for faster transfer of information between the hemispheres, it's no wonder a woman can make so many fast, accurate judgments about people and situations on an intuitive level. Why men can only do one thing at a time. All the available research agrees. Men's brains are specialized, compartmentalized. A male brain is configured to concentrate on one specific, dedicated task at once, and most men will tell you they can only do one thing at a time. When a man stops his car to read a street directory, what's the first thing he does with his radio? He turns it down. Most women can't understand why this happens. She can read while listening and talking, so why can't he? Why does he insist on turning down the TV when the telephone rings? When he's reading the newspaper or watching TV, why can't he hear what I've just told him? Is a lament that has been made by every woman in the world at some time. The answer is that a man's brain is configured for one thing at a time because of fewer connecting fibers between the left and right hemispheres and a more compartmentalized brain. Take a brain scan of his head when he's reading, and you'll find he is virtually deaf. A woman's brain is configured for multitasking performance. She can do several unrelated things at the same time, and her brain is never disengaged, it's always active. She can talk on a telephone at the same time as cooking a new recipe and watching television, or she can drive a car, put on makeup, and listen to the radio while talking on a hands-free telephone. But if a man is cooking a recipe and you talk to him, he is likely to become angry because he can't follow the written instructions and listen at the same time. If a man is shaving and you talk to him, he'll cut himself. Most women will have had the experience of being accused by a man of making him miss a turnoff on the highway because she was chatting to him at the time. One woman told us that if she is angry with her husband, she talks to him while he is hammering a nail. Because women use both sides of their brains, many find it more difficult to tell their left hand from their right. Around 50% of women cannot instantly recognize which is which without looking for a ring or a freckle first. Men, on the other hand, operating in either the left or right brain, find it much easier to identify left from right. As a result, women all over the world everywhere are criticized by men for telling them to turn right when they really meant left. Try the toothbrush test. Most women can brush their teeth while walking and talking on several topics. They can make you pan down strokes with the toothbrush at the same time as polishing a table using a circular movement with the other hand. Most men find this very difficult, if not impossible. When men brush their teeth, their monotracked brain means they focus entirely on that single task. They all stand square to the basin, feet 30 centimeters apart, body bent over the sink, moving their head back and forth against the brush, usually to the speed of the water. Why we are who we are. At a time when we are raising boys and girls as if they are identical, science is proving they are dramatically different in their thinking. The conclusion that neurologists and brain researchers everywhere have now reached is that we are who we are because of hormones. We are who we are because of hormones. We are all the result of our chemistry. Late 20th century thinking says we are born with an empty mind and our parents, teachers, and environment dictate our attitudes and choices. New research into the brain and its development now reveals that our minds are configured like a computer at around 6 to 8 weeks after conception. Our basic operating system is in place and several programmers are also installed so that when we are born we come prepackaged, like a computer with an array of add-in hardware and software. Science also shows that the basic operating system and its wiring leave little room for change. Our environment and our teachers can only add data and run compatible programs. And up until now, there have been practically no how-to manuals available. This means that when we are born, our future choices and sexuality preferences are preset. Nature versus nurture? It's a done deal. Nature had the head start from the very beginning. We now know that nurturing is a learned behavior, with adoptive mothers proving just as effective at nurturing children as biological mothers. Programming the fetus, almost all of us, are made up of chromosomes which are like genetic building blocks or a blueprint. 23 come from our mother and 23 from our father. If our mother's 23rd chromosome is an X and if the father's 23rd is also an X, the result is called an XX baby, which is a girl. If the father's 23rd chromosome is a Y chromosome, we'll get an XY baby, which will be a boy. The basic template for the human body and brain is female. We all start out as girls, and this is why men have female features such as nipples and mammary glands. At the 6 to 8 week point after conception, the fetus is more or less sexless and has the potential to develop either male or female genitalia. German scientist Dr. Gunther Dorner, a leading pioneer in social science, was one of the first to advance the theory that our sexual identity is formed 6 to 8 weeks after conception. His research showed that if the fetus is a genetic boy XY, it develops special cells that direct large amounts of male hormones, particularly testosterone, through the body to form male testes and configure the brain for masculine traits and behaviors, such as long-distance vision and the spatial skills for throwing, hunting, and chasing. Let's say that a male fetus XY needs at least 1 unit of male hormone to form male genitals and another 3 units to configure the brain with a male operating system, but, for reasons we will discuss later, it does not receive the required dosage. Let's say it needs 4 units, but receives only 3. The first unit is used to form the male genitals, but the brain receives only 2 more units, which means that the brain becomes sex 2/3 male and remains 1/3 female. The result is that a baby boy is born who will grow up to become a person with a mainly male brain, but with some female thinking patterns and abilities. If the male fetus only receives, say, 2 units of male hormone, 1 is used for testes formation and the brain gets only 1 instead of the required 3. Now we have a baby whose brain is still mainly female in structure and thinking, but it is in a genetically male body. By the time puberty arrives, this boy is likely to be homosexual. We'll discuss how this happens in Chapter 8. When the fetus is a girl, little or no male hormone is present, and so the body forms female genitalia and the brain's template remains female. The brain is further configured with female hormones and develops nest-defending attributes, including the centers for being able to decode verbal and nonverbal signals. When the baby girl is born, she looks female and her behavior will be feminine as a result of her female-wired brain. But occasionally, usually by accident, the female fetus receives a significant dose of male hormone, and the result is a baby girl born with, to a greater or lesser extent, a masculine brain. We will also discuss how this happens in Chapter 8. It is estimated that about 80% to 85% of males have mainly male-wired brains, and about 15% to 20% have brains that are feminized to a greater or lesser extent. Many of these in the latter group become gay. 15 to 20% of men have feminized brains. About 10% of women have masculinized brains. Any references to female gender in this book will refer to approximately 90% of girls and women whose brains are wired for mainly female behavior. Around 10% of women have a brain that is wired, to a greater or lesser extent, with some masculine abilities because it received a dose of male hormone 6 to 8 weeks after conception. Here is a simple but fascinating test that can show you the extent to which your brain is wired for masculine or feminine thinking. The questions have been collated from many leading studies into human brain sexuality, and the rating system used was developed by British geneticist Anne Moyer. There are no right or wrong answers in this test, but it gives you some interesting insights into why you make the choices you make and think the way you do. At the end of the test, you can score your result on the chart. Photocopy the test and give it to those you live and work with, and the result will be a real eye-opener for everyone. The Brain Wiring Test. This test is designed to indicate the masculinity or femininity of your brain patterns. There are no right or wrong answers. The result is simply an indication of the probable level of male hormone your brain did, or did not, receive around 6 to 8 weeks after your conception. This is reflected in your preference of values, behaviors, style, orientations, and choices. You may want to pause this video now to get a pen and paper. Now that you are ready, let's begin. Write down the statement A, B, or C that is most likely to be true for you most of the time. First question. When it comes to reading a map or street directory, do you A, have difficulty and often ask for help? B, Turn it round to face the direction you're going. C. Have no difficulty reading maps or street directories. Question 2. You're cooking a complicated meal with the radio playing and a friend phones. Do you 1. Leave the radio on and continue cooking while talking on the phone. 2. Turn the radio off, talk and keep cooking. 3. Say you'll call them back as soon as you've finished cooking. Question 3. Friends are coming to visit and ask for directions to your new house. Do you 1. Draw a map with clear directions and send it to them or get someone else to explain how to get there? 2. Ask what landmarks they know, then try to explain to them how to get there. 3. Explain verbally how to get there. Take the M3 to Newcastle, turn off, turn left, go to the second traffic lights. Question 4. When explaining an idea or concept, are you more likely to 1. Use a pencil, paper, and body language gestures? 2. Explain it verbally using body language and gestures. 3. Explain it verbally, being clear and concise. Question 5. When coming home from a great movie, you prefer to 1. Picture scenes from the movie in your mind. 2. Talk about the scenes and what was said. 3. Quote mainly what was said in the movie. Question 6. In a cinema, you usually prefer to sit 1. On the right side. 2. Anywhere. 3. On the left side. Question 7. A friend has something mechanical that won't work. You would 1. Sympathize and discuss how they feel about it. 2. Recommend someone reliable who can fix it. 3. Figure out how it works and attempt to fix it for them. Question 8. You're in an unfamiliar place and someone asks you where north is. You 1. Confess you don't know. 2. Guess where it is after a bit of thought. 3. Point towards north without difficulty. Question 9. You found a parking space but it's tight and you must reverse into it. You would 1. Rather try to find another space. 2. Carefully attempt to back into it. 3. Reverse into it without any difficulty. Question 10. You are watching TV when the telephone rings. You would 1. Answer the phone with the TV on. 2. Turn the TV down and then answer. 3. Turn the TV off, tell others to be quiet and then answer. Question 11. You've just heard a new song by your favorite artist. Usually you 1. Can sing some of the song afterwards without difficulty. 2. Can sing some of it afterwards if it's a really simple song. 3. Find it hard to remember how the song sounded, but you might recall some of the words. Question 12. You are best at predicting outcomes by 1. Using intuition. 2. Making a decision based on both the available information and gut feeling. 3. Using facts, statistics, and data. Question 13. You've misplaced your keys. Would you 1. Do something else until the answer comes to you? B. Do something else, but keep trying to remember where you put them. C. Mentally retrace your steps until you remember where you left them. Question 14. You're in a hotel room and you hear the distant sound of a siren. You 1. Couldn't identify where it's coming from. 2. Could probably point to it if you concentrate. 3. Could point straight to where it's coming from. Question 15. You go to a social meeting and are introduced to 7 or 8 new people. Next day you 1. Can easily picture their faces. 2. Would remember a few of their faces. 3. Would be more likely to remember their names. Question 16. You want to go to the country for your holiday, but your partner wants to go to a beach resort. To convince them your idea is better, you 1. Tell them sweetly how you feel. You love the countryside and the kids and family always have fun there. 2. Tell them if they go to the country you'll be grateful and will be happy to go to the beach next time. 3. Use the facts. The country resort is closer, cheaper, and well organized for sporting and leisure activities. Question 17. When planning your day's activities, you usually 1. Write a list so you can see what needs to be done. 2. Think of the things you need to do. 3. Picture in your mind the people you will see, places you will visit, and things you'll be doing. Question 18. A friend has a personal problem and has come to discuss it with you. You 1. Are sympathetic and understanding. 2. Say that problems are never as bad as they seem and explain why. 3. Give suggestions or rational advice on how to solve the problem. Question 19. Two friends from different marriages are having a secret affair. How likely are you to spot it? 1. You could spot it very early. 2. You'd pick up on it half the time. 3. You'd probably miss it. Question 20. What is life all about as you see it? 1. Having friends and living in harmony with those around you. 2. Being friendly to others while maintaining personal independence. 3. Achieving worthwhile goals, earning others' respect and winning prestige and advancement. Question 21. Given the choice, you would prefer to work 1. In a team where people are compatible. 2. Around others but maintaining your own space. 3. By yourself. Question 22. The books you prefer to read are 1. Novels and fiction. 2. Magazines and newspapers. 3.
Non-fiction, autobiographie.
Question 23. When you go shopping, you tend to 1. Often buy on impulse, particularly the specials. 2. Have a general plan, but take it as it comes. 3. Read the labels and compare costs. Question 24. You prefer to go to bed, wake up and eat meals. 1. Whenever you feel like it. 2. On a basic schedule, but you are flexible. 3. At about the same time each day. Question 25. You've started a new job and met lots of new people on the staff. One of them phones you when you are at home. You would 1. Find it easy to recognize their voice. 2. Recognize it about half the time. 3. Have difficulty identifying the voice. Question 26. What upsets you most when arguing with someone? 1. Their silence or lack of response. 2. When they won't see your point of view. 3. Their probing or challenging questions and comments. Question 27. In school, how did you feel about spelling tests and writing essays? 1. You found them both fairly easy. 2. You were generally okay with one but not the other. 3. You weren't very good at either. Question 28. When it comes to dancing or jazz routines, you 1. Can feel the music once you've learnt the steps. 2. Can do some exercises or dances, but get lost with others. 3. Have difficulty keeping time or rhythm. Question 29. How good are you at identifying and mimicking animal sounds? 1. Not very good. 2. Reasonable. 3. Very good. Question 30. At the end of a long day, you usually prefer to 1. Talk to friends or family about your day. 2. Listen to others talk about their day. 3. Read a paper, watch TV, and not talk. How to score the test. First, add the number of ones, add the number of twos, and also the threes. For males, multiply the number of ones by 10 and write it down. Multiply the number of twos by 5 and write it down. Multiply the number of threes by -5 and write it down. Add up the numbers. For females, multiply the number of ones by 15 and write it down. Multiply the number of twos by 5 and write it down. Multiply the number of threes by -5 and write it down. Add up the numbers. For any questions where the answers didn't accurately reflect your life, or you left them blank, award yourself 5. Analyzing the result. Most males will score between 0 and 180 and most females, 150 and 300. Brains that are wired for mainly masculine thinking usually score below 150. The closer to 0 they are, the more masculine they are, and the higher their testosterone level is likely to be. These people demonstrate strong logical, analytical, and verbal skills and tend to be disciplined and well-organized. The closer to 0 they score, the better they are at projecting costs and planning outcomes for statistical data, with their emotions hardly influencing them at all. Scores in the minus range are high masculine scores. These scores show that large amounts of testosterone were present in the early stages of the fetal development. The lower the score for a woman, the more likely she will have lesbian tendencies. Brains that are wired for mainly feminine thinking will score higher than 180. The higher the number, the more feminine the brain will be, and the more likely the person is to demonstrate significant creative, artistic, and musical talents. They will make more of their decisions on intuition or gut feeling, and are good at recognizing problems using minimal data. They are also good at solving problems using creativity and insight. The higher the score is above 180 for a man, the greater the chance he will be gay. Males who score below 0 and women who score above 300 have brains that are wired so oppositely that the only thing they are likely to have in common is that they live on the same planet. Scores between 150 and 180 show compatibility of thought for both sexes or a foot in both sexual camps. These people do not show a bias for either male or female thinking and usually demonstrate a flexibility in thinking that can be a significant advantage to any group who are going through a problem-solving process. They have the predisposition to make friends with both men and women. A final word. Since the beginning of the 1980s, our knowledge of the brain has surpassed our wildest expectations. U.S. President George Bush proclaimed the 1990s as the decade of the brain, and we have now entered the millennium of the mind. In our discussion of the brain and its various regions, we have simplified neuroscience to avoid being too technical, but we are also conscious of not oversimplifying because the brain is a web-like structure of neuron scientists that form complex assemblies of brain cells which make up brain regions. You, the reader, don't want to become a neuroscience. You just want a basic understanding of brain function and some strategies that work when dealing with the opposite sex. It's easy to pinpoint the area of the brain used for spatial skill in males and to develop working strategies for it. It's much more difficult to get a handle on the exact operation of emotion in the brain, but even so, we can still develop workable strategies for dealing with it.